The cold metal floor of the Velnara courtroom echoed with every step as Captain Ethan Ward was dragged inside. His wrists were locked with glowing energy cuffs that pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. Two alien guards, tall, pale, and elegant, pushed him forward until he stood beneath a giant throne. Ethan raised his head slowly. The room was massive. High black pillars stretched toward a glowing ceiling that looked like liquid silver. Rows of alien nobles stared down from their seats. Their eyes glowed crimson, and their skin shimmered like polished marble. To them, Ethan was not a man, he was a curiosity. A wild creature caught in their trap. A deep voice boomed from the front. "Human, you stand accused of violating the borders of the Velnara Empire. You brought warships near our moons. Explain yourself." Ethan kept his back straight. "My ship crashed after a battle. We weren't invading anything." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The nobles whispered to one another in their strange, melodic language. Ethan caught fragments of words. Deathworlder, dangerous, abomination. The speaker leaned forward. His eyes narrowed. "You expect us to believe that a human ship wandered into our system by accident?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Believe what you want. I didn't come here for a fight." That single sentence caused another wave of whispers. The Velnara were a proud species, ancient and powerful. They fed on life energy from other creatures. They ruled hundreds of worlds. No one dared speak to them with such calm defiance. Then a softer voice cut through the noise. "Enough." The crowd fell silent. From behind the throne curtain, Princess Lysera Velnara entered. She was tall, graceful, and looked almost human except for her faintly glowing eyes and silver-white hair that flowed like light itself. She wore a long gown made of black crystal threads, and every step she took sent small sparks across the floor. Ethan looked up, meeting her eyes for the first time. There was something strange in her gaze. Curiosity, not hatred. "This is the human?" she asked. "Yes, Your Highness," the speaker replied. "He is the captain of the warship Soul's Wrath. The humans claim it was an accident. We believe it was reconnaissance." Lysera walked closer to Ethan. The guards tensed, but she raised a hand. "Release him." "My princess, that is unwise. Release him," she repeated. The cuffs opened with a hiss. Ethan rubbed his wrists, confused but silent. Lysera circled him slowly, studying him like a scientist examines a rare specimen. "Strange," she said softly. "His life force burned so brightly. Most species tremble before us, yet his energy resists our pull." The nobles began to murmur again. Some looked frightened, others angry. Ethan frowned. "You talk like you can see my soul." Lysera tilted her head. "In a way I can. The Velnara sense life energy, but yours, it does not fade even in fear." Curious, Ethan met her gaze without flinching. "Maybe humans are just stubborn." That answer made her smile, just a small one, but it caught everyone's attention. The princess of the Velnara rarely smiled at anyone, much less a prisoner. The council elder stepped forward again. "My princess, this human is dangerous. His kind destroyed 2 pirate fleets in a single day. Their biology is unstable, their tempers violent. We should execute him now before his presence corrupts our world." The crowd murmured in agreement. Some hissed the human word monster. Ethan just sighed quietly. He'd heard worse before from his own kind. Lysera turned her eyes toward the elder. "Execute him?" "Yes, princess. For the safety of the Empire." For a long moment she said nothing. Then she turned back to Ethan, her crimson eyes glowing brighter. He expected her to agree. That would have made sense. He was their enemy, after all. Instead, she did something that froze the entire court. Lysera raised one hand, pointed directly at Ethan, and said clearly, "I want him as my husband." The room exploded in noise. Shocked gasps, shouts of protest. Even the guards took a step back. Ethan blinked. "Wait, what?" Lysera stood tall, her expression calm and unshaken. "You heard me. I claim this human under the ancient rite of binding. He is mine," the elder stammered. "But princess, that is forbidden. A human cannot—" "I am heir to the throne," she interrupted sharply. "By law, I may choose my own consort if I believe it benefits the Empire." "Benefits?" the elder cried. "He's a savage from a death world." Lysera's voice was cold. "A savage who survived where others would perish. A creature whose life energy resists even us. Do you not see? The Velnara are fading. Our feeding rituals grow weaker each century. This human strength might be what our species needs to live." Ethan stared at her. "You're serious?" She turned to him, her tone softer. Completely. He shook his head in disbelief. I don't even know your people. You want me to what, marry you? Marriage, she said, tasting the word. That is your human term. We call it the bond of life. It unites two beings sharing strength and fate. He laughed once, a dry, nervous sound. Lady, I don't even share coffee without knowing someone first. Her eyes narrowed slightly. You mock me. I'm confused, that's all, Ethan said. One moment I'm supposed to die. The next I'm your husband? Lysira ignored his tone. You will come with me to the Royal Citadel. There we will decide your future together. Ethan crossed his arms. And if I say no? The elder hissed. You would defy the princess? We will tear you apart, human. Lysira held up her hand again, silencing the threats. Her voice was calm but powerful. He will not be harmed. I will take responsibility for his safety. She turned to Ethan once more. Do you have a choice? Perhaps not. But consider this, live as my consort or die as a prisoner. Ethan looked around. Every pair of red eyes in the room burned into him. He sighed slowly. I've had worse proposals. Lysira's lips curved slightly again. Good. Guards, escort him to my ship. The elder shouted in outrage. This will bring ruin to the Empire. Lysira glanced over her shoulder. Or it will save it. The guards hesitated, torn between loyalty and fear. But when the princess's eyes flashed with power, they obeyed. They grabbed Ethan's arm, not roughly this time, and guided him out of the courtroom. As he walked through the long hallways of black stone, he whispered to himself, What did I just agree to? Outside, a massive silver starship waited. Its surface shimmered like a living mirror. The Velnara technology looked almost organic, as if the ship itself was breathing. Ethan was guided inside, and the doors closed with a soft hum. From a window he saw the glowing city below, dark towers surrounded by floating lights. Alien skies. Unknown stars. For the first time since his capture, a strange thought crossed his mind. Maybe this wasn't just about survival anymore. Maybe fate had just dropped him into something far bigger than a human war. Hours later, in her private chamber aboard the royal cruiser, Lysira stood before a mirror made of dark energy. She touched her own reflection gently. Her maid, another pale figure, whispered, Princess, are you certain about this human? Lysira's eyes softened. No, but I feel something within him. Something that doesn't break. If humanity survived a death world, perhaps their spirit can heal what is dying in us. The maid bowed and left. Lysira looked out the window where Ethan's small reflection could be seen in the docking bay, standing defiantly between the guards. He doesn't bow, she murmured, even in fear. Her lips curved into a quiet smile. Interesting. On the other side of the ship, Ethan sat in a small cabin. He rubbed his wrists again and stared at the alien stars outside. Every instinct told him to escape. But deep inside, another part of him whispered something different. He remembered the princess's eyes, glowing, powerful, yet filled with sorrow. Not a monster's eyes, not entirely. Great, he muttered to himself. Of all the galaxies in the universe, I get engaged to a vampire princess. The ship hummed as it rose into the sky, leaving the capital city behind. The stars bent and twisted as it entered faster than light travel. Ethan leaned back, closing his eyes. He didn't know where this was going, but one thing was certain. This was not the end of his story. It was only the beginning. The royal cruiser drifted silently through space, its silver surface glowing like a moving star. Inside, Captain Ethan Ward sat alone in a room that looked more like a museum than a prison. The walls shimmered softly, alive with faint energy. The air smelled strange, sweet and metallic like rain on a power line. Ethan stared at the curved window showing endless stars. He still couldn't believe what had happened. 1 minute he was a prisoner facing execution, and the next an alien princess had claimed him as her husband. He rubbed the back of his neck. This is insane, he muttered. I should have stayed in bed that day. The door slid open with a soft hiss. A tall alien guard stepped inside, his armor shining dark blue. The princess requests your presence, he said in a calm but commanding voice. Ethan raised an eyebrow. She requests? Not orders? The guard frowned. Requests. Do not make her wait. Ethan shrugged. Fine, let's meet my future wife. The guard didn't laugh. None of them ever did. They led him through long hallways filled with floating lights and carved crystal panels that pulsed like veins. Alien servants bowed as the group passed. Some stared at Ethan with open curiosity. Others looked disgusted as if he carried a disease. When the doors to the royal chamber opened, Ethan had to stop for a second. The room was enormous. At its center stood Princess Lysera, dressed in silver and black, standing before a transparent window that looked out over a red nebula. Her glowing eyes reflected the cosmic light. "Captain Ward," she said without turning around. "You seem restless." He crossed his arms. "It's not every day I get kidnapped, crowned, and married all before breakfast." Lysera finally turned, a faint smile on her lips. "You are not married yet, human. Do not rush destiny." "Destiny? You mean your royal decision?" Lysera ignored the sarcasm. "You misunderstand. The bond I offered is more than politics. Our kind is dying. We need strength, life energy that does not fade. Yours is unique." Ethan frowned. "You want to use me like a battery?" Her smile faded. "No, you think too small, human. I do not wish to drain you, I wish to understand you." She walked closer. The air grew colder as she approached. Ethan didn't step back. "You're afraid," she said softly. "But you hide it well." He gave a half smile. "That's called being human." For a moment their eyes met. Hers glowing red, his a deep brown filled with stubborn life. The silence stretched between them, heavy but not hostile. Then Lysera turned away. "You will stay here in the palace as my guest. You will have food, clothes, and freedom within the royal grounds. But if you try to leave the planet, my guards will stop you." "Sounds like a fancy prison." "Call it what you like," she said. "You are alive, and that is more than most humans receive when they cross Velnara space." Ethan sighed. Fair point. Over the next few days, Ethan explored the palace. It was built on a high cliff overlooking glowing seas. The sky was always dark, filled with 2 red moons and ribbons of light like frozen lightning. The Velnara city below was silent, its people moving like shadows. Everywhere he went, whispers followed him. The human, the DEATHWORLDer, the princess's pet. Some nobles came just to see him like he was some rare animal. A few even tried to touch his skin to see if he was real. He didn't mind the curiosity, but the constant staring annoyed him. Back home he was a captain. Here he was a rumor. Still, Ethan noticed something else too. Lysera kept her distance. She watched him from afar but rarely spoke. He often saw her alone, standing at the edge of her balcony, looking at the stars with sadness in her eyes. Once, during a walk through the palace gardens, Ethan found her there again. The plants were glowing softly, their petals made of light. He spoke before thinking. "You always look like you're carrying the whole galaxy on your shoulders." Lysera glanced at him. "Perhaps I am. Why?" "You're a princess. You've got power, servants, and empire." She turned toward the glowing horizon. "Power means little when your people are dying. The Velnara once fed on the life force of other races, but now that energy poisons us. Each feeding shortens our lives. Soon there will be no one left." Ethan listened quietly. "So you think humans can fix that?" "I think you can survive what we cannot. That alone makes you important." He gave a small smile. "Humans don't survive because we're strong. We survive because we refuse to quit, even when the universe beats us down." Lysera looked at him then, and for the first time she seemed curious, not just about his energy, but about his words. "You speak like a soldier who has seen too much." "I've seen enough," he said simply. That night, things changed. Ethan was walking back to his room when he noticed something strange. Shadows moving in the corridor. The guards were gone. The lights flickered. A cold chill crawled across his neck, then he heard it. A whisper, sharp and low. "Kill the human before the bond can form." He ducked instantly as a blade of dark energy sliced through the air where his head had been. 3 masked figures rushed from the shadows, their eyes glowing crimson. Ethan moved fast. He wasn't armed, but years of combat training kicked in. He caught the first attacker's wrist and twisted, sending the blade spinning away. He kicked the second one hard in the chest, sending him crashing into a wall. The third fired an energy bolt. Ethan rolled aside. The shot burned through the wall behind him. He grabbed a fallen spear from a nearby statue and swung it like a staff, knocking the weapon from the assassin's hand. But one of them recovered and lunged again. Before Ethan could react, the door exploded open in a flash of red light. Lysera stood there, her eyes blazing with fury. Energy flared from her hands as she lifted the assassins into the air without touching them. "Traitors," she hissed. You dare attack in my palace? The assassins screamed as their weapons dissolved. She dropped them to the floor, unconscious but alive. Ethan was breathing hard, his knuckles bruised. Nice timing. She turned to him, her expression unreadable. You fought them without fear, he shrugged. I didn't have time to be afraid. Lysera stepped closer. You risked your life. For me? I didn't know they were after you too, he admitted. Guess we're both targets now. For a long moment, she just looked at him. Then something unexpected happened. She placed a hand gently on his chest, just over his heart. You burn so bright, she whispered. No fear, no weakness, Ethan froze, unsure what to say. Her touch was cold but strangely comforting. Why do you care? He asked quietly. Lysera withdrew her hand. Because I have not felt warmth like this in centuries. Later, after the attackers were taken away, Ethan sat in his room again, staring at the alien stars. The palace was quiet, but he couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the fight and her face in his mind. He had seen something different in her eyes that night. Not power, not hunger. Something close to humanity. He sighed and leaned back. Great. Now I'm starting to understand her. Meanwhile, in her private chamber, Lysera stood before a circle of advisors. The assassins were from the council, one said. They will not stop, Princess. Your choice has broken their trust. Lysera's eyes flashed. Then I will make them fear their own betrayal. Another advisor bowed deeply. Forgive me, my princess, but why protect the human at all? He is one life among billions. She turned sharply. Because he saved mine. The advisors looked shocked. You what? When the first blade came, he stood between me and death. He fought without hesitation. No power, no training in our arts, just instinct. That is what we lost centuries ago. She turned back toward the window. The council thinks I chose him for his energy. But what I saw was something far greater. Something our people have forgotten. The next day, Ethan was summoned to the throne room again. He expected anger or more questioning. Instead, Lysera looked at him differently. Less like a prisoner, more like a partner. I owe you my life, she said. He shook his head. I think we're even. She tilted her head. You still do not understand what your presence means here. Enlighten me. She walked down from the throne, her long cloak sweeping across the floor. When you fought, you showed the court something they have not seen in centuries. Courage without fear. You reminded them that strength does not come from power, but from will. Ethan smirked. Humans are good at being stubborn. It's our best quality. Lysera's voice softened. Then perhaps that is what the Velnara need most. She stepped closer again. The bond I spoke of, it may no longer be just politics. It may be something real. Ethan blinked. Are you saying you actually... Before he could finish, a loud alarm echoed through the palace. The lights flickered red. Guards rushed in, shouting about rebellion spreading across the outer colonies. Lysera's calm expression turned to steel. They mean to overthrow me. Ethan stood beside her. Then you're going to need help. She looked at him, really looked, and gave a small, knowing smile. Then help me, human. Let them see what your kind can do. Ethan's grin was sharp. You've got it, princess. The two of them stood side by side as the palace shook with the first sounds of war outside. The bond between them was no longer forced. It was forming naturally, between a warrior who refused to bow and a princess who refused to surrender. The Velnara palace was no longer silent. Explosions echoed in the distance. The night sky outside burned red as rebel ships clashed with royal forces. The rebellion had begun. Princess Lysera Velnara stood at the command balcony watching her city burn below. She had known this day would come, but not so soon. The council had declared her a traitor for protecting the human, and now their loyalists were attacking the capital itself. Her guards waited nervously behind her. They were powerful, but their strength came from energy rituals, old predictable patterns. Against the chaos of rebellion, they were struggling. Then Captain Ethan Ward walked into the chamber, wearing a simple armored vest and carrying a plasma rifle he had borrowed, or maybe stolen, from the armory. His uniform was scuffed, his face tired, but his eyes burned with focus. He stopped beside Lysera. You've got a real mess out there. She gave him a sideways glance. It is my mess, my empire. He looked down at the burning city. Then let's clean it up. A few hours later, in the palace training hall, Ethan stood in front of 50 Velnara guards. They looked elegant and dangerous in their black armor, but their stance was too rigid, too perfect. Ethan could tell they had no idea how to handle unpredictable combat. "All right," he said, pacing in front of them. "You've got good tech, great power, and zero flexibility. That's why you're losing." A few guards frowned at his tone. One spoke coldly, "You are human. What could you possibly teach us about war?" Ethan smiled. "How to win when everything goes wrong." He pointed to one guard. "You attack me." The guard hesitated. "Without a weapon?" Ethan shrugged. "Sure. You've got speed, strength, and I've got human stubbornness." The guard moved fast, too fast for a normal person. But Ethan dropped low, caught his leg, and used his own momentum to flip him over. The alien hit the floor hard. The others gasped. "Lesson 1, Ethan said, standing tall. Don't expect your enemy to fight by the rules." He spent the next hours teaching them how humans fought. Fast, dirty, and clever. He showed them how to use cover, move unpredictably, and think on their feet. They struggled at first. Their moves were graceful but slow, built for ceremony, not chaos. But slowly they began to adapt. Lysera watched from a balcony above. She couldn't help but be impressed. The human moved like a storm, always shifting, never predictable. Even when exhausted, he never quit. When the session ended, she approached him. "You are changing them." He wiped sweat from his face. "I'm trying to keep them alive." "They respect you," she said softly. He looked up at her. "I don't need their respect. I just need them ready." That night, Lysera found Ethan alone on the balcony watching the stars. The city lights below were dimmed to conserve power. The air was cold and quiet for once. She stepped beside him. "You could have escaped, you know, during the chaos." Ethan smiled faintly. "And go where?" "I'd rather fight than run." She studied him. "Humans fight for survival, but you fight for others. Why?" He looked out into the sky. "Because if we don't protect someone, we lose what makes us human." Her eyes softened. "Strange. Your species lives on a death world, yet you value life more than any race I've met," he chuckled. "Maybe that's why we fight so hard for it." There was silence between them, the kind that wasn't uncomfortable anymore. The princess and the human, two enemies bound by war and fate. The next morning, alarms blared again. A rebel fleet had captured one of the border colonies, Vinar 6, a mining world rich with energy crystals that powered the Empire. If they lost it, the capital would fall next. Lysera called her commanders into the war room. Holographic maps glowed above the table, showing the enemy fleet closing in. "We must respond immediately," said General Sarath, bowing. "But their ships outnumber us 3-1. Ethan leaned over the map. "Then we don't hit them head-on." Sarath frowned. "What do you suggest, human?" "A trap," Ethan said. "They expect royal ships to fight in formation. So we don't. We lure them in close, make them think they're winning, and then strike from behind." The generals looked skeptical, but Lysera nodded. "We will do as he says." Sarath bowed again, though his expression showed doubt. "As you command, Princess." Hours later, the battle began. Lysera's fleet appeared near Vinar 6, surrounded by the enemy. The rebels opened fire immediately. Energy blasts filled the void, and explosions lit the darkness. Ethan stood on the bridge beside Lysera. "Hold the line," he said calmly. "Don't shoot back yet." Her officers hesitated but obeyed. The rebel ships advanced confident. They thought the royal fleet was trapped. Then just as they entered range, Ethan gave the signal. "Now." From behind the nearby moon, hidden royal ships uncloaked and fired all at once. The rebel formation collapsed under the sudden assault. Their lead ship exploded in a flash of red light. Lysera's eyes widened slightly. "Your plan worked," Ethan grinned. "Told you. Humans are good at surprises." The battle raged for hours, but the tide had turned. The rebels retreated, their fleet broken. When the smoke cleared, Lysera turned to him. "You may have saved my empire today." He shook his head. "You saved it. I just gave you a new way to fight. But victory came at a cost." When they returned to the capital, the palace was half in ruins. The council's agents had launched an attack while the fleet was away. Dozens of guards were dead. Lysera knelt beside one of them, her expression unreadable. "These men served me since childhood," she whispered. Ethan stood beside her silently. He knew that look, the mix of grief and guilt that every leader carried after battle. She stood slowly. The council will not stop until I am gone. Then we stop them first, Ethan said. Lysera looked at him. You speak as if this is your fight too. He smiled faintly. You're my problem now, princess. For a moment she almost laughed. Then her expression softened. Perhaps. I am. Days passed. The rebellion spread like fire, but now the royal forces were fighting smarter, faster, using human tactics mixed with Velnara precision. For the first time, the rebels were losing ground. Ethan trained soldiers every day. He fought beside them, earning their respect not through words but through action. Even those who once hated him now called him Captain Ward of the Bloodless Guard, a strange honor among the Velnara and Lysera. She changed too. She no longer hid behind formality or fear. She joined Ethan on the battlefield, wielding her energy powers with deadly grace. Together they became a symbol, the warrior and the princess, light and shadow side by side. One night after a brutal battle in the outer city, they returned to the palace, exhausted. Ethan's arm was burned and Lysera's gown was torn. They sat together in silence in the war chamber. Lysera looked at his wound. You are hurt, he shrugged. I've had worse. She touched his arm gently. A soft red light spread from her fingers, healing the burn instantly. He blinked in surprise. You could have done that hours ago. I only heal those who trust me, she said quietly. Ethan looked at her. I guess I do then. For a moment they just stared at each other, two beings from different worlds finding something real in the middle of war. Lysera whispered, Ethan, if we survive this, what will you do? He smiled slightly. Haven't thought that far ahead. Maybe go home. Or maybe build one here. Her eyes softened. With me? He didn't answer right away. Let's survive first. The next morning brought terrible news. A message arrived from the Velnara Emperor himself, Lysera's father. The message was short and cold. Daughter, surrender yourself in the human, or I will send the full Imperial fleet against you. Do not force me to destroy what I love. Lysera read it twice, her hands trembling slightly. He means it. He will burn this planet to ash. Ethan stepped closer. Then we make sure he doesn't have to. She looked at him desperate. You cannot fight the entire empire. He smiled grimly. Watch me. Lysera stared at him for a long moment, then said softly, You are mad. Probably, he said, but humans have a habit of doing the impossible. That night, Ethan called the remaining captains and soldiers into the hall. He stood before them, scarred and tired, but strong. I know you don't follow me, he said, his voice echoing. You follow her, but your empire is bleeding. The council wants to kill your future, and they'll do it unless we stand together. He pointed to Lysera. She's fighting for all of you, for your children, for your survival. So fight with her. Not as subjects, but as soldiers with something worth saving. The hall was silent for a moment. Then one by one the Velnara guards saluted. A roar filled the room, a cry of loyalty, not fear. Lysera's eyes glistened. She looked at Ethan and whispered, You have done what I could not. You've made them believe again. He nodded. Now let's give them a reason to keep believing. Outside, the stars burned bright. The final war was coming, and for the first time Lysera and her people would face it not alone, but side by side with humanity's stubborn, unbreakable spirit. The Velnara Empire had never seen such chaos. Rebel forces, empowered by centuries of resentment, had seized several outer colonies. Lysera's fleet, though strengthened by Ethan's human tactics, was stretched thin. But the worst threat lay not in the stars. It lay within the palace walls. The Velnara High Council had grown impatient. Lysera's protection of a human was an insult to tradition, a challenge to centuries of hierarchy. They whispered of rebellion, of assassination, and of forcing the princess to abdicate. Ethan stood on the balcony with Lysera, watching the crimson nebula glow in the night sky. They're planning something, he said quietly. I can feel it. Lysera's eyes narrowed. I know, my father. My father will not forgive this. He may try to destroy us to protect the Empire. Ethan frowned. Your father? Emperor Kyle? Lysera's voice was heavy with sorrow. He loves his empire more than his daughter, and the council fuels him with lies. The warning came sooner than expected. That night the palace shook violently as a squad of heavily armed council soldiers stormed the gates. Energy blasts tore through the corridors. Alarms shrieked, and the palace guards rushed to defend their princess. Ethan grabbed a plasma rifle and ran beside Lysera. "Show me what you've got." She raised her hands, crimson energy flaring outward. With a sweep of her fingers, she lifted 2 soldiers into the air, their weapons disintegrating in her grasp. "You fight like a human," she said with a small smile. "It is fascinating," Ethan grinned. "And you fight like a princess. Fancy and deadly." They moved as a team, back to back, cutting through the Council's forces. Yet every corridor they cleared led to more enemies. It was impossible to hold the palace forever. In the midst of the chaos, the Council made their move. Lysera's father, Emperor Kale, appeared on the grand balcony, flanked by his elite guards. His energy radiated like a storm. The ground trembled with his presence. "Lysera," his voice boomed. "Abandon this human or you will bring ruin to your people." She raised her chin. "Father, you threaten your own daughter." "The Empire must survive," he shouted. "This human will destroy everything we built." Ethan stepped forward, not intimidated. "You mean he'll destroy what you're afraid to change? Your empire is dying and you know it. This human doesn't want to destroy it, he wants to save it." Kale's eyes narrowed. Bold words for a creature I could crush in a heartbeat. Ethan smiled faintly. "Try it. You'll learn why humans survive death worlds." A sudden betrayal changed everything. One of Lysera's trusted generals, Serath, revealed himself as a double agent. He fired an energy bolt at Ethan, knocking him back. Lysera's shield flared to protect him, but in the confusion, Ethan was captured by Council soldiers and dragged into a dark, hidden chamber. "No," Lysera cried, racing after them. She sent a wave of energy through the hall, scattering guards, but the soldiers holding Ethan were too strong. "You cannot take him." The Council's elite laughed. "The human is nothing. Only the princess can stop us. Surrender him or die." Lysera's eyes burned red. "Never." Ethan struggled in the restraints. "Lysera, I'm fine. Don't let them break you." "I will save you," she whispered, fury coursing through her veins. "Even if the entire empire stands against me." As Ethan sat in the dark chamber, he realized the full scope of the Velnara problem. He had always heard of the curse that plagued their species. Velnara who fed too long on other races would slowly wither, their life energy turning poisonous. That was why the Empire was dying. He examined the restraints, energy shields humming around him, and muttered to himself, "Humans always find a way." With a careful push, he tested the mechanism. It was strong but not unbreakable. He remembered his combat training, his years surviving death worlds. Humans adapted, he thought, and adaptation was exactly what he was about to do. He pulled a small tool from his boot, a human multi-tool disguised as a belt clip, and began working on the restraint. Sparks flew, and for a moment he froze as footsteps approached. "Ethan Ward," a voice hissed. "Stop or we kill you," he grinned. "I don't think so." With one final twist, the restraints fell open. He sprang to his feet as 2 guards lunged. He dodged, rolling forward and knocking one off the platform. The other scrambled back, shocked at his agility. He grabbed one of their energy pistols. "Lesson 1, he whispered. "Never underestimate a human." Meanwhile, Lysera rallied her loyalists. "We cannot let the Council win," she said. Her eyes glowed crimson. "Ethan has survived worse than you, and so will we." A small team of elite guards and palace mages nodded. They moved like shadows, striking with precision, cutting through the Council's forces. The princess was relentless, her energy powers flaring brighter than ever, protecting those she loved. As they fought, she felt something unexpected, a deep trust in Ethan. Even though he was captured, she knew he would survive. He had done the impossible before. He would do it again. In the hidden chamber, Ethan continued to work. He realized something about the Velnara's energy system. Their life force was connected to the palace's core reactors. If he could reroute the power, he could weaken the Council's control over the guards and give Lysera the advantage she needed. It was risky. If he failed, it could collapse the palace itself. "Humans are stubborn," he muttered. "Let's see how stubborn I really am." He began rerouting the energy, wires sparking as he bypassed the ancient circuits. The room hummed louder and louder, threatening to overload. Then a shadow fell across the floor, one of the Council's elite soldiers. Ethan didn't hesitate. He lunged, grabbed the soldier's weapon, and used him as a human shield. The soldier screamed, then collapsed under Ethan's force. Sparks flew everywhere, and the system's hum shifted. The energy flow was changing, just like Ethan planned. Back on the main floor, Lysera fought her way toward the central throne. The council's guards were relentless, but she moved with skill and precision, guided by human tactics she had learned from Ethan. Each step brought her closer to the chamber where he was held. Finally, she reached the locked doors. Energy shields shimmered in blue. She glared at them, concentrating all her power. With a surge, the shield dissolved, leaving the path open. Inside, Ethan smiled. "Took you long enough." Lysera's eyes softened. "I would never leave you behind." He shook his head. Never doubted it. Together they fought back to back, cutting through the remaining council soldiers. Energy flared, alarms blared, and the palace shook as rebellion and loyalty collided in a deadly storm. At the climax of the battle, Lysera confronted her father. "Father," she said, voice steady but full of emotion, "you cannot destroy your daughter to save the Empire. You are killing what you claim to protect." Kyle's face hardened. "You defy me with a human at your side. You will bring ruin." Ethan stepped forward. "He's wrong. The Empire doesn't need fear. It needs courage. And humans. We survive because we never give up." Lysera's father hesitated, seeing the determination in both their eyes. For the first time in centuries, he glimpsed a spark of hope in humanity's stubborn spirit. You are fools," he whispered, but his energy faltered. Lysera extended her hand toward him. "It's not foolish to fight for what is right. You still have time to save your people without destroying us." Kale's energy trembled. Slowly he lowered his arms, the fury in his eyes fading. The council, witnessing their emperor hesitate, began to retreat. By dawn, the palace was quiet. The council had been defeated, scattered across the Empire. Lysera and Ethan stood together in the central hall, bruised, exhausted, but alive. Lysera looked at Ethan, her eyes glowing faintly. "You risked everything to save us." Ethan shrugged. "Humans have a habit of doing impossible things. You just need to survive long enough to see it." She smiled, a real smile this time. "Perhaps I was wrong to doubt your species." "And perhaps," Ethan said, "you'll learn that humans fight not just with weapons but with heart." The victory was bittersweet. Many loyal guards had fallen. The palace needed rebuilding. But one truth remained clear. The bond between human and princess had grown stronger through fire, blood, and betrayal. For the first time, the Velnara people began to see humans not as fragile creatures, but as beings capable of changing the fate of an empire. Lysera turned to Ethan. "The council is defeated, but the war is not over. There are still forces outside our walls who would see us destroyed." Ethan smiled, gripping his weapon. "Then we finish it, together." The galaxy seemed to hold its breath as the final battle approached. The Velnara Empire was in turmoil, but Lysera and Ethan stood at the heart of it, ready to face the consequences of their choices. The council was scattered but not destroyed. Rebel fleets still lurked beyond the borders, waiting for weakness. Ethan cleaned his weapon in the royal armory, his human hands steady despite exhaustion. The alien soldiers around him moved with precision, yet still looked to him for guidance. They had learned much from his teachings: unpredictable tactics, courage under pressure, and a refusal to yield. Lysera entered quietly, her eyes glowing faintly with residual energy from the last skirmish. "Are you ready?" she asked. Ethan looked up. "I was born ready. Are you?" Lysera's lips curved into a faint smile. "I've never been more ready in my life." The human and the princess moved together toward the command balcony, where the map of the galaxy showed rebel positions and council strongholds. Every red dot represented an enemy fleet. Every blue dot represented loyal Velnara ships now trained in human combat methods. "We strike at the heart," Ethan said. "If we destroy their command ships, the rest will fall apart." Lysera nodded. "Then we must move quickly. The faster we act, the fewer will die." The fleet jumped into hyperspace, emerging near the rebel command cluster. The battle was immediate and brutal. Energy blasts filled the void, tearing apart ships on both sides. Ethan moved among the bridge crew, issuing orders. "Focus on their shields first, then hit the engines. Don't wait for them to strike, make them react to us." Velnara ships followed his strategy. They moved erratically, splitting and regrouping, confusing the rebels. The enemy was powerful, but their formations were rigid. Humans had taught flexibility, and it was now their greatest weapon. Lysera floated above the bridge, her energy flaring outward. With a sweep of her hand, she disarmed 2 enemy ships, redirecting their energy into her fleet's shields. "They are strong," she murmured, "but strength alone is not enough." Ethan glanced at her. "Never forget. They underestimate you because you are different. That's your advantage." Meanwhile, deep within the rebel flagship, the Council's leaders panicked. Their tactics? Impossible. How did they learn this? One hissed. A voice, calm but deadly, responded. One human showed them how. Lysera and Ethan moved through the flagship together side by side. The corridors were narrow, shadows flickering as energy fires burned. Rebel guards fell before them, but they pressed forward relentlessly. Ethan dodged a blade, rolled, and fired at a guard. Lysera raised her hand, disintegrating another with a silent sweep of energy. "I've never fought like this before," she whispered, almost to herself. "Then maybe it's time to start," Ethan replied, gripping his rifle. At the heart of the flagship, they found the Council's leader, Grand Advisor Thryn, attempting to channel energy from the ship's core. His aura was dark, twisted with greed and ambition. "You think you can stop me?" Thryn sneered. "This human is nothing. Without your energy, Princess, you are weak." Lysera's eyes blazed. "I am never weak. And this human," she glanced at Ethan, "has taught me the meaning of strength." Ethan stepped forward. "You've underestimated humans for the last time." In a coordinated strike, they attacked together. Lysera used her energy to shatter the control panels while Ethan disarmed Thryn and forced him back. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and the ship began to destabilize. Thryn shouted, "You cannot win." Ethan's eyes burned with determination. "Watch us." As the flagship shook, Lysera extended her hand to the core. Her energy merged with Ethan's life force, creating a surge that neutralized the corrupt energy without harming the ship itself. The rebels screamed as their command systems failed. Ships lost power, weapons fizzled, and panic spread across the fleet. Ethan looked at Lysera. "We did it," she smiled, exhausted but triumphant. Together, the battle ended with the rebels in retreat. The Velnara Empire had survived thanks to human ingenuity and courage. But victory was not without consequence. Many ships were destroyed. The capital lay in ruins. Lysera's father, Emperor Kale, arrived aboard a royal cruiser to see the aftermath. He looked at his daughter, then at Ethan. For a long moment, he said nothing. "You saved the Empire," Kale whispered. "And yet, you risked everything." Ethan stepped forward. "Sometimes saving something worth protecting isn't about following rules. It's about doing what needs to be done." Kyle studied him, then slowly nodded. "Perhaps humans are more than I thought." Lysera touched Ethan's arm. "It's because of him, Father." He reminded us of what courage truly is. In the days that followed, the Empire began to rebuild. Velnara life energy, once fading, began to recover. The human influence, discipline, ingenuity, and courage had not only won a war but also given the species a chance to survive without resorting to deadly feeding rituals. Ethan trained soldiers, rebuilt fleets, and helped Lysera govern with fairness and intelligence. Slowly, the Velnara began to see humans not as fragile outsiders, but as vital allies, creatures capable of shaping their destiny. Lysera, standing beside him on the balcony of the rebuilt palace, spoke quietly. "You have done what no Velnara could. You changed a species." Ethan shrugged, a faint smile on his face. "Humans just survive. Sometimes that's enough to change the world." The citizens of the Empire began to call them the Alliance of Fire and Shadow, human and Velnara, soldier and princess working together to protect the galaxy. And in the quiet moments, when the stars shone above and the palace was safe, Lysera turned to Ethan. "You are not just a human," she said softly. "You are my partner, my equal." Ethan laughed lightly. "Took me long enough to get that title." She smiled, reaching for his hand. "Perhaps the galaxy will remember this story, not as a tale of vampires and humans, but as the story of courage, trust, and unity." Ethan squeezed her hand. "Then let's make sure it's remembered."